Hi, welcome to episode 24 of Two Girls, a Guy, and a TARDIS, starring me, John.
I'm Nicole.
I'm Joanna.
Almost in unison, so sweet. This is a special episode for us because we're going to talk to you about Chicago TARDIS 2013, which me and Nicole were at. Nicole spent the whole weekend there, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And talk about some of the people we met, throw some shout-outs because we did meet some cool people. And we met some people in person for the first time ever.
Yes.
Which was very cool. I may have seen other people I knew, but wasn't quite sure because they don't look like their pictures. Then we're going to talk a little bit, not give any details about the interview, but we're going to tell you a little bit about interviewing Peter Davison, our first ever show-related interview. Someone that worked on the show, and for those David Tennant fanboys out there listening, I shook Peter Davison's hand. His hand shakes David Tennant's hand. Yeah, let that sink in. Because my sister-in-law yesterday was like, "Oh my God, can I shake your hand?" Which is kind of odd because she's a little old to be a fangirl, but I guess you really never outgrow it.
Nope.
Nope. Joanna's like, "I'm on my way."
No.
And so we'll put the interview after it, and yeah, we did. So Chicago TARDIS 2013. My understanding, there was some issues the opening day.
Yes.
Because I believe I was kind of surprised by this when I got there because I knew they were going to have more people. I knew they limited memberships. I don't know why they're called memberships, but whatever. First off, I'd like to send a shout out to them. I really appreciate them setting us up with the interviews.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it took a while, and I was kind of like, oh, I guess they don't, want us. But then Jennifer emailed us and said, hey, who do you guys want? And she did the best she could, and we got 2 of the 5 we had on our list, and then we had 2 other pretty good ones. So it was good. And but I guess I expected them to be more electronic at this point for checking people in,
mm-hmm.
and they were still using their binders and stuff, and they're good people and they're hardworking people, and I just don't think they thought it was going to be as overwhelming as well. I don't think they realized that many people show up at one time, because traditionally people filter in through the day, like Saturday. People
mm-hmm.
filter in, like when we go on Saturdays only, people would just be filtering in, and like by afternoon it'd be crowded, not so much first thing in the morning. So with Joanna. But Nicole, you were there Friday, so you could give a little more insight.
It was very, very, very crowded, and the
like galley crowded.
Well, I mean, in terms of the registration lines for like most of the day, I mean, galley just walked in and registered, and you were done. You were waiting in a very long line for a while.
That's what I heard. I heard a lot of people on Twitter saying that it was like an hour and a half wait.
It seemed to be pretty long for a while, and they were trying, and I didn't know what... I mean, because when you got up there, they did the whole thing in 2 seconds.
Yeah, and again, kudos to them, because for not being electronic, they get you registered quick.
Yeah,
they're not bad. They know what they're doing. They've done it for 14
mm-hmm.
years. I just think the sheer volume of people is what it was.
Everyone must have come at once, but I mean, it seemed to go for a while, because I wasn't someone who got there particularly early, but some people were, and then people that came after me it was like, but I think it got less as the day went on.
I think they knew it was you, and they're like, hey, she's from Two Girls, a Guy, and a TARDIS, with a guy that can't say the name of his own show that he made up.
But yeah, it was, and then the opening ceremonies got basically canceled because the guests were all too tired from their signings and photos.
Yeah, I heard the signings went real long. Again, it's the biggest this con's ever been. It's never been this big.
It's like doubled in size.
Yeah, which is good. I mean, obviously there's going to be growing pains, and hopefully next year a lot of people that were unhappy with the way things went come back, because I'm sure they're going to be more prepared and have it set up different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. This was the first time too that when I went in to hear the end of Peter Davison's panel, I had to wait to get in until someone came out because it was full. Yeah,
they didn't want people standing in back. They were making people find seats. Also, I will say this is the first time that I've ever seen the guests doubled up the way they were for panels. Like, usually, okay, here's Colin Baker. He's 4 to 5. Or 4 to 4:45. At 5 o'clock, here's Louise Jameson. And, they were overlapping guests that were like guests. Probably just, instead of doing 2 full panels and then doing a joint one, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think some of that was probably because of the immense crowds, too. Like, the vendor area was packed when we went in there. I mean...
Yeah.
But how was your first day? Who did you see your first day?
First day, I saw Paul McGann.
Okay.
And Daphne Ashbrook.
I hate saying this, but every time I see him in a picture from Chicago TARDIS, he looks completely disinterested to be there.
He was, I think, really jet-lagged.
Is that what... Okay, because I could understand that.
It was...
Because you look at him, you're like, you don't look like yourself, man.
It was, his panel was... I thought it almost could have been called in the beginning, like, free association with Paul McGann, because he would, like, be talking, and then he'd be like, oh, these lights. Is this a ballroom? It looks like a ballroom. And then, I forget who was his moderator, but he's like, that's why it's called the Grand Ballroom. And he's like, I took ballroom dancing lessons when I was a kid.
You sure he wasn't just high?
I think he was like, he got off the plane, he was like kind of groggy, and
maybe he flew in that morning.
Yeah, I'm not sure when he came, but I think he was kind of jet lagged, so he was kind of like, because he got better though when Daphne Ashbrook came out with him, because she was real lively and
because he's
awake.
not. I mean,
and then he focused a little more. I thought
he's never like shied away from being the doctor or anything like that. I mean, he's more than happy to do these shows. So it was just weird seeing him. Like, wow, he does not look like he's doing well.
I thought he was jet lagged.
Maybe he was jet lagged. Maybe he was kind of sick. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know but it seemed like maybe he was kind of jet lagged and a little bit because it was. I mean, he was still. It wasn't like he wasn't coherent or something. But you could tell he was not terribly focused. He'd wander off a little bit and talk about ballroom dancing as a child.
You know, he was born, I believe, the same year as Peter Davison. I think they were both born like in 54, or Davison was 54 and he was 59. There's like you look at McGann and I thought there was a much bigger age difference, and there's really not. I'm surprised at that.
That's wild.
Yeah. How was Daphne? Oh, go ahead, Joanna. Sorry.
My question is like, what was his? Did anyone ask him about being in the minisode?
That did come up. He didn't.
He never lied. He said he wasn't part of the 50th episode, and he wasn't.
They filmed that though. He said in like a day, and they had him there like secretly.
Well, yeah.
And he had to have a day. But I mean, he was like in Cardiff secretly. He couldn't tell anyone he was there.
And they probably waited near the last minute to film it.
And they had to wait for a day. I think they said when the Doctor Who exhibition was closed because they had to get his sonic screwdriver from the exhibition to use.
Oh, really?
Oh,
so
wow.
It had to be like on a Sunday. No, it's open Sundays too.
Monday? Was it closed?
I think
it's closed.
Yeah.
I think he said it was a Monday maybe, but it had to be because they had to sneak out his Sonic without anyone knowing.
I'd say Howdy liked reprising the role, but realistically, he's been doing it on Big Finish for like a decade. But being back on TV, he wanted to wear a leather jacket, and they said no. And Colin Baker wanted to wear a leather jacket, and they said no. And then Chris Eccleston, they're like, here's a leather jacket.
Eccleston gets what he wants. Huh?
I don't know why he's so pompous. There's a part in the interview with Davison where he goes, yeah, he called up and we got everybody, and everyone was real easy to work with. He goes, well, we didn't get everybody. There's one person who, didn't want to work with us. I'm like, we know who it is.
Because we all saw the video.
It was funny because I wouldn't say he was really being diplomatic about it. Like, you could tell he was, like, not really happy with that person because, whatever. But he didn't say the name. But we know who it was. So you saw... How was Daphne Ashbrook? Because, like, it's hard for me to... It would be hard for me to be like, "Oh, you're Daphne Ashbrook. You were the companion," because it was like one episode. Mm-hmm. But no, has she done Big Finish too?
I'm not sure.
Because I know he's had a whole slew of different assistants, because companions, whatever you want to say.
They also said there's a problem with like the rights to her character.
Is it
Grace Holloway doesn't belong
to the BBC. It was a joint Fox
so they
BBC.
Can't. Like, that's why in the minisode he doesn't mention her when he lists his companions. He doesn't mention Grace because legally they couldn't.
Yeah, he mentions the Big Finish ones.
They weren't even allowed to mention her name, which seemed...
Not even GH.
That's terrible.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think anybody missed it. I mean, if she's not doing the Big Finish stuff, I mean, she had the one episode. I wasn't completely enthused with her character. She did not seem like a surgeon or whatever she was. Yeah, surgeon, right?
Yeah.
She did not seem to be what I would expect a surgeon to be. It's just me, though.
Daphne Ashbrook.
Daphne Ashbrook she was enjoyable, though.
Yeah, she was.
Well, she seems like she'd be all right and nice. It's just, you know, she doesn't write the character. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
isn't she the only American?
Only
American actress to play a companion?
I think so. But yeah, she kind of livened him up a little too, because he was. I just thought, I assumed he was jet lagged, because he just seemed kind of groggy.
I would go along with that.
But when she came out, he kind of livened up a little, and.
Well, I know those guys have been flying all over the world. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were all in Australia. They were all where. I mean, you know.
They were. Nicola Bryant was going to Australia from the convention.
Yeah. We saw the end of that one. I like Nicola Bryant. She seems delightful. So after Daphne Ashbrook and Paul McGann, did you see anybody else?
Well, after them was the wait for the opening ceremonies.
That never happened?
Yeah, didn't happen. And by that point, I was hungry.
There were like 9 different excuses why it didn't happen. I don't know why. You just said that the guests were tired. This is the first time I heard that.
That's what we heard. That the guests were tired. The signings went over. That's why they delayed it. And then they just didn't. But yeah, so we waited, and then I was hungry, so I went and ate, because we'd been waiting to eat for the opening ceremonies, and then... So everything else, we need food more than anything else.
Yeah, we went to lunch at Harry Carey's, me and Joanna, on Saturday, and it was weird because everyone in there was a Doctor Who fan. Mm-hmm. And there was a table with a husband, a wife, and 2 boys talking about the show. And one of the boys said, Patrick Stewart would have made a great doctor. And they were like 4 tables across from us, and I heard it. And I looked, and I'm like, you are absolutely correct. I think a couple years back, Patrick Stewart would have made a great doctor. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that is a smart kid. We got there Saturday morning early, because I had heard the crowds were bad.
Yeah, that's
and
what
I did not want to miss interviewing Peter Davison, because I probably would have committed Harry Carey at Harry Carey's.
That was that's why because I was like, I don't know, but I would just be on the safe side, and because I didn't know if everyone that had a Saturday only pass would come at the same time and cause havoc. And I was like, I figured
cry havoc and let slip the dogs
of war. You didn't want to miss the interview.
I know some classic literature. Don't know what it's from, but I know that line.
But yeah, I was like, and then when you got there and you were like, yeah, there was. I'm like,
we walked right in. It was like 4 minutes. We walked in. I dropped some cards off at the table after we signed in. You know, it was funny. I'm filling out my paper. You have to fill out your own badge. You put your name on it. Me and Nicole here put our names real small in the upper left corner, like when you would start writing something on notebook paper. My wife Joanna, who was with me, you could tell who's right-brained and left-brained, apparently, because hers was real big sweeping letters and filled the whole card. We should have put, like, 2 guys, a girl, and 2 girls. Damn it!
You really want to have picked up another guy
no,
for our
I really
podcast.
don't. I'm really happy having 2 girls, because I can always be like, yeah. No, we should have put, like, 2 girls, a guy, and a TARDIS on it, and neither of us thought of doing that. And I didn't think about leaving cards with you when I left Saturday either. Because I put a stack down, I walked by, an hour and a half later, and there were 3 left. I put another stack down. Walked by 2 hours later. There were 3 left. So, and I've seen our listenership go up. I've seen Twitter followers go up. For some reason, no one seems to want to do Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell is this? Stupid web browser. Anyways. So I've seen numbers climb. So I'm assuming people actually have, and even the website numbers have gone up. So we thank, all of you out there that are giving us a listen and checking out our stuff, and really appreciate it. You're the reason we do this, and because we like to hear ourselves talk. Or at least I do. So we got there, and we were waiting for a while, and there was this kind of commotion. And we're like, what's going on? We turn around and look, and coming through the front door is Colin Baker, who is a much bigger dude, like height-wise, than I thought.
He was the first guy I saw when I pulled into the parking lot. I parked my car, I looked up, and I'm like, that's Colin Baker walking in front of my car. I guess I'm here.
And then she accidentally took her foot off the brakes and hit him. No, I'm just kidding.
But
that would have made for
if
we'd interviewed Baker, that would have made for an awkward interview. I hit you with my car this morning.
I had parked. And I looked
and
looked
you are
down,
actually a very
turned
good
off the
driver,
key.
too.
Taking the key out, looked down, grabbed my bag, looked back up, and I'm like, it's Colin Baker.
He does not try to hide who he is. He is very proud of his time as a doctor, and he seems very rambunctious, very boisterous. His panel was fun, Again, as I got older, I don't blame him for the Sixth Doctor. It wasn't his choices.
Mm-hmm.
So I really wish he could have been able to have better writers and stuff. I think he would have been pretty good. But he walks in, and we had seen earlier this little 2-year-old kid dressed like the Sixth Doctor, brilliant costume. It was so cute.
I saw pictures.
He walks up by, and they're looking at each other, and it was priceless. And everyone's taking pictures. It's the only time you could take a picture of him without paying, because the con hadn't really started yet, and I don't think anyone was going to object to taking a picture of him with the little kid.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really neat to see that. I was like, oh, that's so cute. And we met this girl, and we were talking to her. Her name's Crystal, if she ever listens, and she seems like a nice English girl. That is not English, but sounded like I've been to England. She could pass for someone from England. I guess she'd spent 18 months there, and all the phrasing and wording and voice, everything. She's like, I get that a lot. I'm like, I can imagine. And she was really nice, and we talked to her for a while, and then we met up with you, and we went to the interview area, which is when we both started getting a little nervous.
Oh, the best part, I thought, was after the interviews, when you were passing on care of the recorder to me, and I looked, and you were demonstrating, and your hand was shaking a little from the adrenaline, I think, and I looked at mine, and I was shaking. It was the...
That's hard to tell me, because my hands, if you look at it now even, it twitches.
There's
from
a little
years
bit
of inhaling
of
solder.
I thought leftover
adrenaline
from that, because
there probably was.
Your hand was shaking a little in my hand, and I'm like, they're over. We're not even but just the...
We're still hopped up. We're still pumped. So we get to the room they had set up is doors locked, so not everyone can just walk in. But we found out there's a back way in. Which when we got told that, it was I'm like, oh, I don't have any more interviews. But you had 2 more the next day, so you were able to go in the special way.
Actually, I still waited because I wasn't sure.
I would have walked in.
What?
You're from 2 Girls, a Guy, and a TARDIS. No.
He let me in, though.
Suddenly we're such big time. No, so we're waiting there, and we had a fill-in Joanna. We had my wife instead of Joanna because she couldn't make it. So I'm like, well, whatever, just say you're with the podcast. I mean, what's the difference? I mean, she's been on the show before. It's not like she's, a stranger. Not like we had an entourage. And she was getting giddy and, anxious, which, oh, God, sometimes drives me nuts. I'm like, calm down. She's like, don't yell at me. I'm not yelling at you. Just calm down. I'm nervous as it is. And it was getting close to the time, so I'm like, okay, I'll go knock on the door. And I walk over to the door, and I couldn't do it. I'm like, must knock on door. And I'm standing there, and my wife's like, didn't they hear it? I'm like, I didn't do it yet. So I knock on the door, guy opens it up. He's like, oh, yeah, come on in. Just go around the corner. We walk in. Colin Baker's walking in from the back door, and he's like, hello, everybody. And everyone's like, morning, Colin. It's like, there's like other people from the show in there, and there's other celebrities in there, and we're walking past them. I'm like, this is really cool. And we turned the corner, and there were 2 other podcasters already there. There was a father-son team called Who on Who from Tennessee. Really cool guys.
Yep.
And there was a girl there, and we talked to her for a little bit, and she goes, oh, what podcast are you? And I had the business cards. See? Came in handy. I'm like, here you go. We're 2 girls, a guy, and a TARDIS. And she goes, oh, here you go. And she gives me her card, and it was Geek Girl Chicago, who I had talked to plenty of times on Twitter. And I'm like, I've talked to you before on Twitter, and I know someone that knows your boyfriend. Well, I don't know him, but I know him through the internet. Because her boyfriend is the creator of Our Fair City. Which I think is a really cool radio play. I really like it. I got to catch it. I'm thinking about like a season behind. They're like 5-minute to 10-minute segments though. And Ryan Bond is the guy I know. And she's like, "Oh yeah, he was just over at my place." I'm like, "That's cool." And it was really neat. You know, she's like, "Oh, what's your Twitter name?" I'm like, "Oh, it's this." She goes, "I know. I remember now." I'm like, "Cool." She took a picture of us and all that, so maybe we'll make it somewhere online other than our whole website. But she was really cool, and they were really cool, and hey, give them a listen, you know.
I know Geek Girl Chicago through Doctor Who, like our Doctor Who photo shoots.
Oh, okay, so she's been to it. I didn't know she's been because she did Rose. We saw her and talked to her in the dealer room, and we had ran into her and talked to her again for like a good amount of time too. It was like 10 minutes, and then I didn't see her anymore. I'm like, oh, maybe she had something else she had to go to because there was a lot going on the weekend. She changed into Rose Tyler, and I did not see her at all. Like I didn't recognize her at all after that. So she had 3 Rose Tyler costumes with her, I think.
She is like the best Rose Tyler cosplayer right now. She's really good. I
saw the picture. It was really good. Yeah, she really is. Well, I remember she was at C2E2 and she was saying she was going to be Rose Tyler also. And I was like, oh, because she was like, oh, what's everyone wearing? I'm like, a leather jacket and a black sweater. She goes, oh, you're going as number 9. I'm like, sure. Yeah, I guess it really is. I mean, you know. I need a new leather jacket. Mine's all ripped up. That's why I didn't do it. I would have, but my jacket just looks so tattered now. It's been through so much. And so she was real cool, and she went first, and we kind of heard some of her interview. And then Who on Who went. We heard a little of theirs, and then
we had the ominous music in the background from the episodes. They were airing an
episode right behind the wall by us, so it's like. Then the episode ends, and it's like the theme, and you're like.
At one point, people were cheering,
applauding and cheering, and I was bowing at the table.
I was trying to figure out what episode that was,
and then we were like trying to talk, but then there'd be silence because we're like, "Why are we talking too loud? We don't want to be on her interview thing." So they did their interviews.
And then you were texting from across the table. You were answering Joanna's text that she sent to both of us, and all of a sudden my phone got a text from you. I'm like,
what? Nicole's like, I'm right here. I'm like, what are you talking about? Oh, it's a group text.
It was my text.
Yeah, it was yours. And then, so we did our interview, and Peter Davison, very, very nice man. Just very personable, very, very down to earth. Like, I could see going and just having a drink with him and just hanging out, and he seems like he'd just be he's so laid back and just so like down to earth. Like, no, I mean, he's kind of done a lot of acting. He's done a lot of acting in the UK. He's been on a lot of successful shows. And you know, when you think about, I didn't really think about that until we left the room, because I was sitting there and I'm like, you know, I'm like, wow, I'm sitting a foot away from a guy that's probably my favorite doctor. He's in the top 2 that I grew up watching on TV. And then after we walk out of the room, it dawns on me, like, oh my God, this guy's kind of a big name he is a big name in England. And I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. But he was great. I mean, what do you think? I mean, he seemed like he genuinely was having a good time. On the other hand, he's a really good actor too, so it's really hard to say, but he seemed like he was enjoying his time.
For being his 3rd interview in a row, probably hearing some of the...
Poor guy got like a bite out of his bagel.
Yeah.
Aww.
But everyone kept saying, do you need some time to eat? I mean, no.
Oh, yeah, I even said, like, whenever you're ready, and let me know.
Every podcaster was like, do you need a moment? And he's like, no.
It was really cool, and he was real nice. And he left his water on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And we went back to that room 2 hours later?
Well, like an hour by the time
like an hour.
Because we were last.
Yeah. To interview Louise Jameson. And the bottle was still there, and my wife and Nicole are both like, should we take it? It's like, I possess the DNA of Peter Davison, you know. And it was there the whole time. And I
was more worried about accidentally drinking it, because I had my bottle of water, and it was like near mine.
That would have been like you kissed a doctor.
I was like, I don't want to accidentally just grab water, and so I kept pushing it.
On the plus side, it was a well-known actor, and whatever, not like a homeless dude.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was.
If I had to drink somebody else's water,
he'd be fine. So then the next interview we did was Louise Jameson, who Nicole lit up. You were so lit up and smiling, like you connected with her immediately because you like theater. She's been in tons of theater productions, but she was she was very nice, very pleasant, but she just has this presence about her when she walks over. Like, I can't put my finger on it. She was very classy, but she was just very soft-spoken, so I hope it recorded well. I mean, I moved it. Joanna's like, you should put it closer. I'm like, any closer and it's going to fall down her shirt. Or it's not going to pick us up. I mean, I can only move it so close to the guest, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But she was very nice, very sweet, and it looks very good for her age, you know? I mean, but she just has this, classy presence, classy English woman presence about her. And, it's like she walks over and you feel like she's the one in charge. Like, you don't feel nervous with her, but it's like she is the person in charge. Like, she has that about her. You saw that in her character. I'm like, so that, I don't think that was acting when she did that. I mean, that was really her. But you were all smiles. You couldn't tell because you couldn't see yourself. But you were beaming. You were just like...
No, I had a little mirror set up so I could look at myself during the interview.
Our mic stand was my cell phone. Worked rather well. But she was great. She was very nice too. She was not eating breakfast.
No, a little later.
It
was noon, so...
But they were both very nice and very cool in completely different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Peter was talking, and he was waving his arms around a little bit, and, and she was kind of prim and proper and sitting, and, but it was such a stark contrast, but they were both so nice and so, genuinely happy to talk to us, it seemed, and I'm sure, I would think they would be. I mean, they seem like it, and I can't see them just being like, oh. But, yeah, it was great.
Mm-hmm.
I could have actually gone home right after that and been happy. That I told Joanna, I'm like, we can go home right now. I'm completely happy. In fact, I'm taking you to Harry Carey's because we're getting a nice lunch because I am happy and I've done one of the coolest things I've ever done in my life. I was pretty happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. Was Louise in the reboot, the Five-ish Doctors?
I think she is one of the heads spinning around Stephen Moffat.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I believe so.
Because there's so many you can't...
One of my favorite... I'm not going to give, like I said, anything about the interviews. They're about 20 minutes long. But I will say one of my favorite parts of it was when we were talking to Peter Davison, and I brought up about how the music changed when they walked inside and how they stopped and looked. And he's like, they wanted me to cut that part out, but I left it in there for people like you. He goes, I left it in there because I knew it would be worth it for the people that got it. And that was really cool. I'm like, he wrote that and did that for the fans, which was really cool. So, but yeah, we'll put the interview after this, and you can hear more of it. It's pretty good, I hope. And then what did we see? We went to see. We saw Colin Baker after that, and Nicola Bryant, and they were pretty good. Colin had a lot of fun up there, and then Freema Agyeman was on. We saw her.
Mm-hmm.
How was she?
She was great. I thought she was very fun.
Well, when she started with the first high five, I was like, You're opening a door there that's...
But a lot of the people were like, I just want a hug. And it was a lot quicker than their questions. So, but she was great. I mean... But Freema was great. She was great to all the fans. She was very nice. Oh, I think before her we saw Terry Molloy and Michael Jaston. And Steven moderated that panel. But no, Freema was great. Terry Molloy and Michael Jaston, they were good. I think I think me and Joanna left a little earlier from the Terry Molloy one. We watched most of them. I didn't realize it until we were there listening to Michael Jaston. He's the theater guy. I mean, I kind of figured, because a lot of the older English actors that you see started off in the theater and have done lots of theater work. But seemed nice enough. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, the next day, Nicole got to interview both of them, and that one will be posted later on after this one. We're not gonna. So actually, if you stay tuned after Peter Davison, I'll put the Terry Molloy interview that Nicole did. And for those of you that are new Who fans like Joanna and don't know who he is, Terry Molloy played Davros for the 4th, 5th, and 6th Doctor. 7th?
No, it's 5th, 6th, and 7th.
Yes, because 5th, 6th, and 7th. I'm sorry, you're right. Which means we have interviewed, and Michael Jaston was also interviewed by Nicole. He played the Valyard in the 6th Doctor story, The Trial of the Time Lord. And actually, we interviewed somebody related to the 4th, 5th, 6th. Yeah, 4th, 5th, and 6th Doctors. Right? Because Louise Jameson was 4th. Who was related to the 7th?
Molloy. Remembrance.
Oh, 5, 6, and 7. Right, okay. Yeah, so we interviewed a pretty broad spectrum of Time Lord history. So, but
spoke to a Time Lord.
So how was Sunday? You two of them. So how was Sunday then? Because you did the 2 interviews. Mm-hmm. Was it a Madhouse Sunday too?
No, Sunday is much more kind of empty. People are leaving. Even they were supposed to have a panel with the 3 doctors, which they did have, but they had to cut short because they had a flight to catch.
All of them?
I guess whoever was on that flight. You're flying back with 3 doctors.
Did you see the 5-ish doctors that they showed with Peter Davison doing the commentary?
No.
They did that Sunday morning.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, come on.
I know. Someone tell me. I want to hear those stories.
Well, we can't help you. We can't help you. Neither of us were there.
No.
So if you were there and you know any of those backstories, please post them on our Facebook page so we can all read them. Or let us know. Maybe we'll have you on the show. Why not? Send us we have Twitter, we have Facebook, email. Knock your stuff up. So what else was going on Sunday then? Just
Freema did another panel. I saw most of that, but then I had to go to the interviews, so I missed the New Who panel.
We are the New Who panel. We don't need to go see one.
Made it out just in time to catch, I think, the 3 doctors.
How was that?
That was, they were entertaining, but yeah, it was much shorter than it was going to be. It was like...
I would love to see all 4 of those guys. Baker, McCoy, Davison, and McGann together. Because, it seems like they really have a good chemistry together.
Oh, they made... Since he wasn't there, they were kind of making fun of McCoy. With, Colin Baker said that in his mind, McCoy never took over. Because he never filmed the regeneration scene, so he's like, it was still me. The other guy doesn't count. And they kind of had a few little, I'm
jokes. In The Hobbit. Oh, really? I had no idea.
But yeah, that was Colin Baker's version, that he was still the Doctor. McCoy was just an imposter.
Oh.
Stole his coat and...
Solves the regeneration issues.
Yes, so... remove another regeneration.
All right, we're good. No, it was a good time. It seemed like a lot of fun. We ran into... It was a good time. We ran into Busty Warren, who was a femme fourth Doctor. I didn't recognize her at first because she was laying on the floor by a turtle that was dressed as the fourth Doctor also. I remember walking past her going...
I saw that turtle.
I remember walking past her going, who's laying on the floor taking a picture with the turtle? And then sure enough, it was her. So she was there. We met Sarah for the first time in person. Mm-hmm. She was very cool. Her and her friends were pretty cool. Talked to them for a little bit. Introduced her to Busty. It was a nice time. Saw, I think, Mary Jo. We saw them in working, and so we didn't want to bother them. So we kind of just waved, and she was running somewhere with food or something. So it was like, all right, we'll have fun.
Well, they mentioned
do all
that
the
they saw
volunteering
you
stuff.
guys.
Yeah. I mean, we saw them for just a brief second.
I know.
Well, I knew they were working. I knew they were busy, so I wasn't going to be like, hey. So that was nice. It was neat to go and meet people actually, and meet podcasters and talk to people. I just need to get better at being like, hey, can I take a picture? But I was kind of overwhelmed. There were so many good cosplay. I took nothing for pictures because by the time I'd get the camera out or think about it, they were either crowded by people or walking away. But there was a handmade Cyberman suit. I mean, there was the lizard woman,
Madame Vastra.
There was a Madame Vastra handmade I mean, these people, there were some phenomenal cosplays. There was a mini Dalek with a little girl driving it.
Oh.
K9 was there again. It was impressive. There was a ton of great cosplay.
John, I know Madame Vastra's Jenny that was cosplaying with her.
Which Madame Vastra? Because there were
there's more than one?
Yes, there was. There was at least, I want to say 3 for sure.
One of them I know cosplay is her. My friend is her Jenny.
Okay, I don't know because there was one with a really detailed, great looking, it looked just like the show. There was one that looked pretty good, and the other one looked pretty good too. So I don't know which one. I think I'll hit a Jenny with them. I mean, so it's hard for me to be like, yeah, it's the one. And I like how you were like, there was more than one. Yeah, there were a couple. So, but I guess that's about all I have. I mean, it was a great time, and it was nice meeting all of you, and I'm glad, whoever is listening to us that's new, welcome, and thank you. We appreciate it. I've said that numerous times this week on Twitter. We appreciate our fans. So, thank you. And stay tuned for some interviews. Well, joining us today in our TARDIS, which looks amazingly like a Sony voice recorder, is the one and the only, the Fifth Doctor himself, Peter Davison.
Hello.
Peter, first I want to get this out of the way. I was at C2E2 earlier this year, and you were there.
Right.
And I had my little girl with me, and I had the first comic book with the Fifth Doctor, and you signed it for me.
Oh, excellent.
And I remember leaving there thinking that Peter Davison is one of the nicest people I've ever met. And as far as I know, I still think so.
Very nice, very nice.
Interview's off to a great start.
So far, yeah.
Yeah.
It's all down here from here. Or all down over here. I guess I'm just going to start with when you first found out that you were going to be the Fifth Doctor, knowing that you were following up Tom Baker, the longest-running Doctor, who a lot of people say is their favorite. Just so you know, you're probably mine. You're in the top.
You're doing very well.
You're in the top 1 or 2. When you found that out, did you feel any added pressure when you went into the role?
This is very much a question I'm asked outside of the UK. In the UK, Tom was the 4th Doctor, and had followed a succession of 3 great Doctors: William Hartnell, Patrick Troughton, and John Pertwee.
Yeah.
If I felt intimidated or pressured, it was following them, really not Tom. Maybe that's because I watched William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton, who I think was my favourite Doctor, and then I suppose I drifted away because of. I got to the age when you discover other things, and I was, then I went to drama school, and was working in theatre, but I hadn't really watched Tom very much.
Okay.
I was aware, obviously, of his Doctor, and a bit closer because there's music playing in the background.
That way you don't have to...
I was aware of his Doctor, obviously, and indeed I caught the odd episode. But I didn't sit down and watch Doctor Who avidly. I was aware when I came over here, which was very shortly after I got the part, that really most people had only ever seen Tom.
Right.
And so it's a question I'm asked all the time, but I would say if I was pressured by anything, it was following my Doctors, William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton. Tom, I know he did it for the longest time. I understand that, but I was trying to emulate or find something that I had enjoyed so much from those early Doctors. So no, I wasn't really pressured by myself.
It's good.
That's actually what I was kind of wondering. You were the first Doctor to really have watched the show. Everyone else just came into it. It was a job. So do you feel like that affected the way you came into it?
It affected very much the decision process to do the part, because to me my iconic Doctors were older, and I did wonder whether I was of the right age to do it, but I knew at the same time that once I'd been offered it, and they did just call me up. I didn't audition for it. I was very fortunate. They just rang me up and offered it to me. I was sort of aware that although I was humming and hawing, I could actually not turn it down. I was just wasting everyone's time by going, let me think about it for 3 or 4 days, because it was a process. I just had to justify it in my own head that I could do justice to it. And once I'd done that, I said, yes. It was, it's very odd to be offered a childhood icon, a childhood hero of your own. I'd often thought since I'd become an actor of getting a part in Doctor Who, or maybe I get a couple of lines here or there. I'd never actually thought about playing the Doctor, and so you can imagine it was slightly traumatic. I think I was in a state of shock for 3 or 4 days.
Wow.
Strangely, looking back on it now, from this point where we are now in 2013, I don't appear out of place at all, because of course then when it came back with a succession of younger Doctors. So now I feel just like absolutely right there. I was rather pleased that I was no longer the younger Doctor.
Well, I think at the time you were the youngest.
I was the youngest then, yes. Yeah, Matt Smith was the first one that came along. He was younger, but people say, "Oh, are you really cross? You got your?" I say, no, because it was always a worry that I was too young, and now I'm not the youngest. It's great.
Well, I was kind of glad to see the choice of Peter Capaldi, because you can only go so young before you have a toddler running around.
Yeah, I mean, my son. My son said, "Oh, he's old, Peter Capaldi," but I said, look, I grew up on a Doctor exactly the age that Peter Capaldi is, and
right.
I loved it. It's just what you're used to, isn't it? Really, and once he starts, Peter, he will be the Doctor. There's no doubt in my mind.
I'm actually rather excited to have an older Doctor, and I've seen some of Peter's work, or Peter Capaldi's work, rather. He has an intensity at times that I think would be great for the to bring
He's
out.
a terrific actor. There's no doubt about that. And when Matt announced he was leaving, it's the cue inevitably to get this interminable list in the British press about who is going to be the next Doctor. And for the most part, there are 1 or 2 exceptions, but for the most part, that list was appalling. And I would sit there going, oh, no, they can't be serious. And of course, the press are such that they basically will lie, and they will go, we've got an absolute definite, this person is definitely playing the Doctor, and it's all nonsense. And
that's really how the Sun reports, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely. Yeah, and I remember when Peter Capaldi's name first came into the frame, which was only about 3 or 4 days before it was announced that he was going to be the Doctor. I remember for the first time thinking, now that would be a good choice, and so it was great that he turned out to be the Doctor.
Yeah, there's definitely a look about him, and he's another person that grew up watching the older Doctors. Like,
exactly.
for me, you were my first Doctor. When I watched the most stuff, so I could say you were the first. Here in Chicago on public broadcasting, you'd have telethons where they'd raise money for the channel, and they'd show a Pertwee episode, they'd show a Baker episode. So it's probably the onesie-twosies how I started. But when I started watching every night or every Sunday night at 11 o'clock when I was supposed to be sleeping on my black and white TV, it was you.
Well, I remember that. I remember coming to Chicago very early on, because it was always a huge Doctor Who town. And I remember it being on late on the Saturdays. staying up far too late, you kids.
Well, we were talking about Peter Capaldi taking over the role, but I also was wondering when you took over the role, since you had watched the classic Doctors before you, was there anything that you tried to take from them? Did you have specific things you went, I want?
I just felt, what I felt was, when I sat down and I watched, I'd watched John Pertwee for a bit, I wasn't that huge a fan of John Pertwee's. He's such a brilliant comedian, John Pertwee, and yet I know people will say this about my Doctor, but that's another story. John made the decision to play it without any trace of humour at all, I can see, which I think was a bit of a shame. So what I think it lost after Patrick Troughton was a sense of vulnerability in the character. I think John played it, and it worked on a certain level, absolutely. He played it really as a sort of superhero. Yeah. And sort of always absolutely in control of everything. Nothing really ever stumped him. And Tom did a similar thing in a different way, with humour, but in a different way. And I just felt it had lost. I wanted to bring back a bit of that vulnerability that Patrick had, a bit of that slightly, is this the right thing to be doing, or not really sure, and not to mention blind panic. So I just, that's really what I wanted to sort of bring in, things that I remembered, really, and a bit of the irascibility of William Hartnell, which I loved so much. I mean, he was the most extraordinary child here, if you think about it. I mean, he's a grumpy old man, basically, but then kids found they loved him, which is magic, but there you go.
And then did you, because I'm always curious how your Doctor takes shape, because they're all so different. Do they give you a lot of idea of how to play it?
They give you no help whatsoever. I mean, it is, I still think, and people have now, people have sort of mastered it now, I think, maybe because they're better. But most parts, if you're given them as an actor, you can at least do some sort of background research and go, okay, this person, he was brought up in this kind of neighbourhood, he had this family life was like this, and you can build up a kind of picture of him in your head through the sort of background that we all are aware of. With Doctor, you're given nothing, really. I mean, in my time, I think I was told he was a 750-year-old Time Lord from the planet Gallifrey. And, of course, the other thing is you're cast to be different. You're not cast to be like the previous Doctors. You're cast to be entirely different. So, in my first story, I tried to bring in elements of William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton and even John Pertwee, just into slightly confused moments where he's becoming the Doctor. But as for a character, your positive idea of a character, you just have to let it emerge. I remember John Nathan Turner said to me when I took the part, he said, I wanted to cast a personality actor. Well, I'd never, ever thought of myself as a personality actor at all. I mean, that was the furthest thing from my mind. I thought I had no personality at all. When I did All Creatures Great and Small, I was very, very shy, sort of young actor. And I remember when I was offered that part as Tristan, I thought, how the hell am I going to play this here? This is outgoing, gregarious character, everything that I'm not. And what happened with that was I became a bit like Tristan, or at least I used things, that it enabled me to use things in my personality that I was too shy to use normally. And so it gave me a certain amount of confidence. And I think from that, he interpreted that as me just being like Tristan, that they cast someone who was just like Tristan, therefore I was a personality actor. But I really wasn't, so I had to go back to square one and sort of, and bring in elements of Tristan, I suppose, into that thing, and that did help quite a lot. There was a well-known chat show on before, and I was a guest on it before I started work on Doctor Who, and they'd invited several members of the public, quite young members of the public, to give their advice about how I should play the Doctor. They clearly thought I needed help. Anyway, I was very struck by one young guy who got up and said, I think you should be like Tristan, but brave. and that was really my blueprint for playing the part. Didn't seem to be as good a point to start as any.
So I'm going to fast forward a few years.
Okay.
We watched the Five-ish Doctors a couple times.
Oh, right, okay.
It's brilliant. I love all the little nods, and when the music when it changes, you guys are looking around like,
I'm glad you got that.
Oh,
they tried to make me take that out.
Oh no, it was brilliant.
They said, "Oh no, people won't get that." I said, "No, they'll get it, even if one person's mentioned it to another person who missed it. They'll go back and watch it again,
and it'll be worth it." And I think it was brilliant. I love that the music you use primarily in it is music very reminiscent of when you and Colin and Sylvester were doing it.
Absolutely, yeah.
How did you come up with? When did the idea come to you? Was it, if I'm not going to be in the 50th, I'm going to make my own?
Well, I foolishly answered that very question. I was asked at a convention the summer of last year if I was going to be in the 50th anniversary special. I said I thought it unlikely. And then I added almost as an afterthought, but if I'm not, I'm damn well going to make my own. And I realised the foolishness of this when I was asked at the following convention that I did, is it true you're going to make your own? And I thought, Lord. So a German, actually, I wasn't that quite as bad as that. I thought, but the German idea had sort of started in my head about. It started off with the scene that it starts off with in my head of me saying,
with your sons.
Yeah, my son. I was saying, is it going to be a 50th anniversary special? I go, no, I think there might. I don't know. I'm sure there will be. It's going to be more. And they sort of both there. One is a fan of Matt Smith. One is a fan of David Tennant. And there are extremely. I'll go, on the telly, and I'll go, look, who's that on the telly? And I go, you. So I thought they keep your feet on the ground, and I thought it was quite nice to start with that idea that they weren't interested in me being in it at all, and there was a lot of talk. Are you going to be in it? So we were, to a certain extent, waiting for the phone call to ring. Not in that. We weren't actually sitting at the table staring at the phone, but anyway, it was a nice exaggeration of the thing. Of the feeling that we had, and it just grew from that. But the nicest thing was when I finally sat down and wrote a script, and I sent it to Sylvester and Colin, who I'd asked if they'd be interested, and they said yes, and then they both came back and said, "Oh no, yeah, we'd love it." That both of them almost assumed the characters that I'd written. So Sylvester assumed this character who just interminably went around suggesting that, telling everyone that he was in the Hobbit. Did you know I'm in the Hobbit? And
with the T-shirt on, which I thought was brilliant too.
Well, he came along with the T-shirt one time and said, "Okay, I've got other choices. Do you want me to change?" I said, "No, I think you should be in the Hobbit T-shirt all the time."
Yeah.
Because it's just obsessively just trying to convince us, tell us that you're there, you're in the Hobbit. So they threw themselves into it, which I couldn't have done it without their sort of commitment to it.
Well, you had a huge cast. I mean, you had past and present alum, and your daughter was in it.
Yeah, well, originally,
eating ice cream with celery.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which some people didn't catch that either.
Yeah.
But I thought they didn't.
But as I say, eventually they do. You see, eventually someone like you'll say to someone who didn't catch it, "Did you notice the celery?" But the thing was that it grew. Originally, I thought this is going to be about 7 or 8 minutes long, and then we just think of different fun things to do, and they'd involve different people, so we'd ask different people, and they all said yes, with the exception of one person who decided to turn us down.
We have a good idea.
But even that, I was working with this guy, Rhys Thomas, we were just talking about the project, and I told him about this idea of we had for replacing the missing character, and he said that's funnier than having him in it.
Yeah.
So I thought, we'll do. That's what we'll do.
There's a little piece of me that really hoped that you guys were those Zygon, or were the Zygons on the sheet.
And when we keep asking this question.
I mean, it all adds up. You were there.
It adds up. We were there. Absolutely. I wouldn't question it. We were definitely on those sheets.
And you did have great insider access. It seems.
I had huge insider access.
Yeah.
I got George and my daughter along as producer, because it was getting too big and out of hand. But everyone, I mean, like Sean Pertwee, after once. I said to someone else just now, the difficulty was getting past the agents in a lot of cases.
I can imagine that.
Once we got past the agents, the people themselves were hugely keen to do it. And John and Sean Pertwee.
Well, Barrowman would allow
John Barrowman. John Barrowman's agent, we couldn't get past him. And Georgia, that's when I got Georgia on board, because I knew one thing that would get past an agent is the name Tennant.
That works. Well,
she produced it under her name, which now of course is Georgia Tennant, but as a person in real life. And so we got John on board, and he was great. We had huge restrictions. We were only allowed to have him for an hour or something, but that wasn't him. But he just...
You made the most of it with him, though.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
You played up every convention we go to where we hear co-stars of his. They always, especially the Torchwood guys, are always like calling him Borrow Man, because he's always like, they say he's always singing. So having him sing and play and then Bart using the CDs and DVDs as currency was just brilliant.
I think we edited that bit afterwards. That wasn't in the script.
We
sent him, so we're slightly worried when he sees that bit. He might be offended, but I think he won't be. He'll be fine.
But, I guess that leads me to what I have as my last question. You've played a Time Lord. Mm-hmm. Your daughter's played a Time Lord, which I still think she needs to come back at some point.
I quite couldn't agree.
Or a spin-off show would be great, because the male-female question always comes up, and I always say there's female Time Lords, let one have a show.
Well, they've only got episodes to last. We don't do many episodes in Britain, so we've only got, 10, 12, 13 or something like that, the most. Yeah. So really to fill up the rest of the year, you need another...
You have 2 shows.
Yeah, you need another
Balance
show.
It out,
Get on to it, come on.
And I know obviously your son-in-law David is a Time Lord. How is dinner how is a Christmas dinner at your family?
Well, obviously we don't really sit around talking about Doctor Who.
We
quite often talk about experiences of Doctor Who, but we don't go around. I remember in that in my episode.
I can see you and David just get the screwdriver out.
The funniest thing, I think, and I still do wonder, you can't help it. When we go for, if they come around for Sunday lunch or something, and we go for a walk in the park. All of us, so kids and other halves, and David and I. What happens when you're walking around, if you're well known in Britain and in America too, you usually don the baseball cap and the dark glasses. Well, of course, in your head, this is your disguise, so that people don't recognise you. But at the same time, it does make you look incredibly conspicuous. Yeah. So we will be walking through the park, and the kids will be just riding along. George will be pushing the pushchair, and my wife will be walking the dog. And there's David and I, both wearing baseball caps and dark glasses. We're the 2 most conspicuous people in the entire park. So of course they look at us. So it has quite the reverse effect of keeping us anonymous. We still can't help doing it because thankfully David takes most of the heat off me. So they're usually after him, not me. But
I don't know. You've had a pretty good.
My credit ratings now with the 5-ish Doctors, and I'm out there in my present form. Playing,
you wear the T-shirt?
I nearly brought the T-shirt here, actually. I should have done.
Wear the T-shirt, the dark glasses. No one will recognize you.
Nobody, absolutely.
You've done great work outside of Doctor Who, though. I mean, we have a service here called Acorn TV now.
Oh, right.
And it has The Last Detective.
Yes.
You starred in.
That's right.
I've watched probably the first 5 or 6, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah, no, I've been...
And you're on Law and Order UK,
that's right,
which has been running strong.
Yeah, and lots of things. I was quite... Early on, we had Campion over here as well.
Yeah.
So, and I've done a lot of things.
The Brath at home...
That was here as well, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if you know where to look.
Yes, exactly. So, yes, a lot of things actually have come to America. It's most things too, if as you say, you look for them. But in Britain...
a few rocks.
Yeah. In Britain, it's a combination of things. I've been around for a long time, so I am fairly recognisable, yeah. So I do need the sunglasses and the dark glasses. More than anything else, it's catching people's eye. That's the thing. What you have to do if you're not wearing the full gear is you can't catch anyone's eye. If you catch someone's eye,
they make the contact.
They suddenly go, and then of course it's touch and go whether they know who you are or they just think they've seen you down the pub. And that's almost worse because they won't let go of that. So they go, how are you? Haven't seen down to the pub lately? And they go, no, I think you're mistaking me for someone else. No, down the pub, Chicken and Chickens, you're always down on a Saturday night. No, I've never been there. You know me but you can't sort of say, oh no, you know me off the telly.
Then you'll have a whole other group of people.
Well, yeah, it just sounds a bit sort of, a bit pompous. So you have to go along with this conversation, trying to discourage them from the idea that they know you from somewhere else. Anyway, so you tend to walk around. Consequently, you don't see people who you actually do know, and so you tend to cut those people dead. So it's a very, very tough life. Actually, it's not at all. It's very nice. It's been very good this year. I mean, people say, you know, has it been a tiring year? But really, for the most part, we go around to conventions like these where people tell us how fabulous they think we are. So it's not really that tough a life, is it?
We get the we do a podcast, Two Girls, a Guy, and a TARDIS, and they say who? That's what it's about.
Exactly. Yeah.
We got a signal that we need to
wrap
up.
Right, okay.
But you know what? It was a pleasure. Thank you for joining us on our TARDIS that looks like a Sony recorder. And
right, I'm now going to shove cream cheese down my face.
Yep. And
nice
good luck in anything else you do.
Thank you very much.
Look forward to seeing you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Welcome to Two Girls, a Guy, and a TARDIS.
Thank you.
Sitting here with Terry Molloy, who of course played Davros. Mm-hmm. And actually, before getting to your Doctor Who work, I was looking into your background a little, and I saw you started out in music.
I did, yeah. I went and studied music and drama at Liverpool during the mid-'60s. I didn't do a lot of studying. I actually spent most of the time playing in a soul band in the cabin and around and about. So, and that was... I actually, first of all, wanted to be a vet. That was my big ambition as a child. But I'm just hopeless at science, and it took me 3 goes to get my, O-level maths. So I thought that this isn't going to be a runner at all. So I enjoyed the music, but at the end of the course, I thought, well, I'll have to work really hard to be as good a musician as I'd really want to be a session musician or something like that, Mm. And I thought, well, I quite enjoy acting. It seems a fairly lot easier, and there are more days off. So I plumped for that.
And what instrument were you playing in the...
I started off at school. I learned clarinet. Well, the very first instrument I tried was bugle, and then I went on to cello, and then piano, and I hated all of those. And then, just out of the blue, somebody gave me a clarinet, and I just took to it like a duck to water, and sailed away through the exams, and became very proficient. So when I went on to university, I took that with me, but I also had got a saxophone by that time as well, and I'd been playing in a jazz band. We'd had a jazz band at school, sort of mainstream Jerry Mulligan kind of thing, and I had a baritone sax. And then I joined up with this band, one of whom the members was in the same group that I was studying, and I schlepped around with them for about 3 years, and it was great fun. Really good fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Liverpool was a really bouncy place. We're talking, 66, 67, 68. It was a really sparky place to be at the time.
So not too long after the Beatles.
No, indeed, no. Although Liverpool had moved on into what they call Northern Soul. Mm-hmm. That was coming in much more. So we were playing a lot of the Atlantic Soul from across the water, but also beginning to write stuff and arrange stuff, because I did brass, so I would try to arrange it. And we had a big brass section. We had a 4-piece brass section, so we were moving much more towards like Chicago Transit Authority feel in trying to write our own stuff, as well as covering all the old soul numbers as well.
And then I saw that you started out acting more in the repertory theater.
Yep.
So that must have been grueling. I read Elizabeth Sladen's autobiography. It sounded kind of like...
Some reps were more grueling than others. I mean, there were sorts of reps that what they call weekly rep, where they would do a new play every week. Mm-hmm. That's just a killer. You're trying to learn one, you're playing one, and Death in the Water. The repertory, the main repertory companies ran on basically a monthly basis. Mm-hmm. And they would do a play and play it for a month, and then another play would come in. Some of them would do them in repertoire, so you would bring back a play that had been done a few weeks. And this was based on having a company in the theatre, the same company, all the way through the year. So you could do this switching round of plays at different times. And I started working in children's theatre, touring around the countries, and then moved into rep and started working at Victoria Theatre in Stoke, which was a very sparky rep, had a good reputation for doing sort of gritty, realistic social dramas and documentaries and things like that. And I moved on from there, really. And we had a very thriving repertory theatre tradition in those days, which sadly now is gone. I mean, there are no reps left. There are a few theatres that do plays, but they're one-offs, and actors come in and do the one play and go away again. The whole feel of the thing. But it's sad because it's lost a whole training ground for a whole generation of actors. That was our training ground. You worked in rep, then you might do some television or radio or whatever, and move on from there. Now people come out of drama school straight into televisions. They haven't got the time to be somewhere else, and it's a great shame because it actually lends a great texture to actors to work in that situation, to spend time rehearsing with other people and being in the same town with the same people, week in, week out, month in, month out for a period of time. You build relationships, you build a rapport with your audience, and that's all part of the building up of the spirit, spiritual batteries of an actor is getting that reaction back from an audience. So, it's a shame those days are gone.
Mm-hmm. And then from there, you seem to move into radio and doing eventually into a lot of radio plays. And I know you've been on The Archers for 40 years now.
I mean, it was actually when I was at Stoke, I was picked up by one of the radio producers in Birmingham, and I started doing a few jobs, productions for him. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really loved it. And it was through him that I got The Archers, because they were looking for this character for The Archers, and he suggested me, and I went in and auditioned for it, and that was it. I got the job, thinking it was going to be for 5 weeks. That's what I was told. And this was in 1973. So we're now 40 years on, and I'm still in the programme, and it's still going out. And I've grown up and been in it, man and boy, all my life, really.
Did you find that at all a challenge, playing the same character for 40 years?
No, I mean, it's interesting because because you're not doing it every day, you're literally we record 1 week in every month. So, and in that week they'll do 26 episodes, and you might only be in 2. So you're talking about 2-hour slots during the course of 1 week in a month. So you're not living and breathing the character as you would be, say, on a television soap or in a theatre production. So it's a bit like you have the character, and it's a bit like pairing an old pair of slippers that you slip into once a month, and you it's very odd because you don't notice time passing. You really don't notice time passing. And I think it was only when I was about 20 years in, God, it sounds awful, 20 years in, that they auditioned for somebody to play my son, who was now meant to be, 18, 19, because they now wanted him to speak. Because the youngsters in Ambridge, well, traditionally never spoke until they were about 18, because then they could get an actor to do it. Mm-hmm. It was when we were auditioning for that. We had this range of actors, and I was there auditioning with them. And the last one of the day came in, and the minute he opened his mouth, the hairs on the back of my neck just went up. So I thought, that was me. It's me, but me 20 years ago, And that's when the passing of time kind of hit me, And I thought, I wonder if he thinks I'm as big an old fart as I thought the older actors were when I joined the Archers, because, you have that arrogance of youth, and you think, what do they know about it? And then you find out that most of them are working with some of the greats in theatre and radio way before I was even born, So, yeah.
Because that's something we don't really have much in America, radio dramas.
Yep. There's no tradition. We've always had a tradition of radio drama here, and the same applies in places like Australia. They bemoan the fact that they haven't got an audio tradition. And it's companies like Big Finish that have brought the Doctor Who genre into the audio arena that have attracted a vast audience across the world. And people are saying, why haven't we got this at home? Why haven't we got these kind of things? Sadly, also in the UK, the tradition of radio drama has been diminished on Radio 4. The amount of work being commissioned has been diminished, and it's a great shame because it is, as I say, for me, it's my favourite medium because it doesn't matter what you look like. I can still play a 20-year-old punk or an 85-year-old West Indian on radio. I can play parts I'd never be able to play if I was on stage or on film or TV. So, from that respect, the actor also has the most control because there's not a lot that anybody can do to shift the focus from what you're doing There's no lighting changes, there's no changes of, camera angle or anything that's going to block out what you've been aiming to do. It's you, your voice, creating the character, painting the picture for them to, bring into their imaginations and fill in the gaps. So from that point of view, for me, it's my favourite medium.
Mm-hmm. And I was wondering, obviously playing Davros, you don't really get to show your face. You have limited movement, so did your radio background really inform your performance?
Very much so. Yeah, I mean, that's what, in a way, attracted me to it, because I realised that you've got to... Well, in those days, we didn't have the prosthetics we have now, a very immobile mask, so you got a visual image, but it didn't have very much expression in it, so the expression had to come through the voice. You had to create that character and paint the picture of the madness, the paranoia, the evil, whatever you want to call it, from within, and allow that to come through the mask or play it through the mask. So for me, that was a fascinating exercise, and I thought, well, it's like doing a radio play on telly, and quite rightly so. Now we've moved on, and I don't do it on telly anymore. I do it on radio, and it's a lot more comfortable to do it that way. You don't have to get into all the stuff. You really can, actually, you're using the voice, you're informing the character. It comes through the voice and the subtleties and the nuances that you can get in a radio performance are far greater than you can sometimes get on telly.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, obviously Davros, kind of one of the iconic villains on Doctor Who.
Yeah.
But did you have any trouble, getting into the character? Because he's, often played as kind of the Hitler-esque character. So did you have a difficult time at all getting a handle on it, or...?
No, because I am basically a megalomaniac, in
of
real
course.
life. No, I mean, because obviously I'd got the blueprint that Michael Wisher had laid down, but we tried, as we moved through with Doctor Who on the telly, to move slightly away from that, so it wasn't just this, two-dimensional intergalactic Hitler.
Yeah.
But there has got to be some subtleties. You can't play evil. You can't play I'm evil, because it becomes really boring. You've got to play the truth of I'm doing good. Mm-hmm. You're the one who perceives it as evil. As far as I'm concerned, I'm doing good. Oh, I'm doing what needs to happen. The fact that you see it as wrong is your problem, not mine. So it was finding those nuances to actually bring that forward was a fascinating thing. We started to do on the telly, and obviously did a lot more when we got into the Big Finish stuff and doing those.
That's actually, I wanted to ask you, in your Big Finish audios, I know you've been able to do a lot more with the character than in the show. Tends to pop up here and there, and stories more about the Doctor. So, and I know you've done some audios, so what did you feel like you could do with the character once you got to the Big Finish audios that you couldn't do when it was on the TV show?
Well, the first thing, not the first thing, we did it sort of quite a way down the track, was to actually fill in the backstory of who Davros is. What was the journey? How did he get from, Aryan youth, young, feisty lad, from a beautiful race of Aryan people, to this crippled monster who's got this, designs on everyone and everything around him. But also there were areas of the game playing, I think, which for me was important, between Davros and the Doctor. I think one of the essences is that both Davros and the Doctor are on an intellectual par, and they know it. They recognise in each other that they are their intellectual equals. And for them that's rare, because most people fall below the line. They fall below the bar. But they know they've set the bar and they're both on it. They also both know they're alone. So in a kind of sense they need each other. So it's not to do with guns going off and explosions and all of that. It's to do with the intellectual chess game that they play with each other. It's the point scoring there that is, in a way, one of the keys to their relationship, and what can make it extremely interesting, and takes it out into another dimension from, shoot 'em ups. It's into something slightly different. And I mean, that was very much the case in Terra Firma, which I did with Paul McGann, where, the Doctor is trying to push Davros into schizophrenia and make him believe that he's actually a Dalek, And Davros, conversely, is trying to show the Doctor his total loneliness by showing him world as a dead Earth as a dead planet, and all his blessed, earthling creatures that he loves so much gone, so that he really is alone. And it's the fear of the loneliness, I think, that inhabits both of their darkest nightmares. There's a speech in one of them where Davros explains what it's like being inside his body, and how, this happens and this pain happens and that pain happens. And there's this great long speech about, the pain and the awfulness of loneliness of this, that, the other. And that's the first second. And he's reliving that every second of his imprisonment, in this cryogenic chamber. And you just think that's awfulness, and how do people not go mad in that? But because they are on their own. And that is the same with the Doctor, I think, in many ways. You see him up against things, and he's fighting his own nature to do certain things. And that relationship with Davros and the Doctor, I think, is the key thing that can happen on audio, and has happened much more than has ever been attempted to be done on television. We didn't do it in our time, and even in the new series, they copped out and just made it a shoot 'em up, rather than, actually making it an interesting story between the two of them. But there we go.
Yeah, that was actually my first introduction to the character of Davros, was through the new series.
Okay, yeah.
And then I went back, and I
saw the other, yeah.
It was kind of like when I first saw him, I was like, this is who we're really... And then I went back, and he really has many...
facets.
In the earlier series.
But it's very difficult when, I suppose for writers it's very difficult to, if they're doing things, they've got an idea for a character, it's put together by somebody in the first thing, and somebody goes, oh, that's good, we'll run with that and do this, so people are adding bits on or taking things away at each step. And the great thing for us was, when we were doing the big finish, was actually to do I, Davros, where we were able, over 4 audio CDs, a bit like I, Claudius, to explore this great family on Skaro, and how Davros, this brilliant-minded, gifted young man, how he becomes the cruel creator of the Daleks, and why, and some of his reasons for doing it. And for us, it was an interesting, because we had to say, well, there's got to be a starting point for this. How, you're not born evil. You don't sort of wake up going, ha, 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 ha. There is nurture and there is nature involved in coming to a particular point in your life, the things around you that affect you, and also what's there in your base makeup that is going to create or add to the creation of the person that you become. So, one of the starting points for us was looking at autism and saying that here's a guy with a brilliant savant mind, but no social skills. Cannot cope socially with anybody. All he can see is problems and how to solve them. And if anybody gets in the way, they get blown out of the way. Because as far as he's concerned, the solution of the problem is the important thing, not what gets in the way of it. That's immaterial, So again, it's not an evil thing. It's just sort of a totally mindless sort of, what's the problem? We've got to solve this problem. Okay, I've blown a load of people out of the way. So yeah, that ability to sort of go back and dissect and re-examine a character is good, and thankfully within a time travel show, you can be anywhere. It's not people going, oh, you did this and you've done that. You say, sorry, you're still thinking in a linear form here. There's no linear form in Doctor Who. You can't be. It's a time travelling thing. You can go anywhere and be in any place at any time in any of the characters' lives. So, fascinating.
And I was just wondering then, since you obviously have a really thorough understanding of the character,
far too much, I'm afraid.
Do you have input into the Big Finish audios? Do they ever check with you and say, we want to do this? Would this be something Davros would do, or?
No, not really. I mean, we did with Davros, and when I first did the very first one with Gary Russell, he came to me and said, look, would you consider doing this, and do you think it'd be all right to do one without the Daleks? I said, yeah, why not? Plenty of Dalek stories without Davros, they can exist without each other. And then again with Davros, we had this discussion of, how do we get from A to B? But no, normally, the writers thing, they'll ring me up and say, do you want to do this? And in fact, one of the Curse of Davros, they sent the script through to me, and I'm just very lazy about reading scripts, and I read the first, 2 episodes, and I just put it down. I thought, this is rubbish, this is absolute toss. I don't know who wrote this. It doesn't make any sense. The characters are all over the place. It's absolute nonsense, And then eventually I read through to the next episode, and I went, okay, I see now. Right, yeah, the revelation is made in that. Yeah, right, okay, now it all falls out. Now I understand. Okay, yeah, but that's just me being a lazy actor.
And I mean, I've always wondered, just when you took the role, did you have any idea you'd still be playing it over 25 years later?
I thought it was a 2-week job. I mean, I took over from Michael Wisher. I thought Michael Wisher would come back, and I took over only because they'd shifted the production sideways because of a BBC strike, and he wasn't available, So I thought, I'm standing in, and great, But obviously they liked what they saw and asked me to come back and come back again, and and then the Big Finish stuff has carried on as well. So no, I thought 2 weeks and I'll be out of this, But yeah, here we are, 30-odd years later, and it's still going and going strong, and I'm delighted. It's been part of my life, like the Archers has. It's been a very important part of my life, and I'm very grateful to it.
Well, thank you. I think that's our time for today. But
great.
Thank you for being a guest.
My pleasure entirely.
Pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.